Right, so we get this review about FatalZone, and honestly, it sounds like they're kind of stuck on whether to really get into it or not.
Yeah, I get that. It's a zombie game. Like, how many zombie games are there?
It's a tough genre to stand out in, for sure. Kind of like trying to make a new vampire flick that's actually good.
Right. It's like Vampire Survivors kind of blew the doors off the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
So what makes this game, this Fatal Zone, different, besides the zombies, obviously?
Well, from what I'm seeing in this review, it's a base building aspect. And apparently, it's not just some tacked-on thing. It's supposed to be really woven into how the whole survivors-like thing works.
Okay, yeah. They didn't mention using resources you find during runs to actually make your base better. That's kind of cool. Usually you just hope for a slightly less terrible weapon to show up, right? Exactly, and that's where it gets different. By making those base upgrades tied to what you do in the game, Fatal Zone seems like it's got this whole strategic layer you don't usually see.
So it's not just like, survive this run and hope for the best next time, but actually building something up for future zombie-smashing adventures.
Yeah, precisely. Imagine it. You spend a whole run just focused on getting materials, you go back to base, and now your defenses are way better. The next T-run is going to play totally different. You're not just reacting to the horde anymore. You're kind of, I don't know, dictating how it goes down.
Ooh, I see the appeal in that for sure, like building up a fortress or something. But the thing is, the review seemed kind of unsure if it all actually works well or not.
Yeah, there are definitely some things that give me pause too. Like, the reviewer mentioned this disconnect between how you play and what you actually see happening with the upgrades.
Wait, so you're saying you build stuff, but you don't actually see it change?
That's what it sounds like. Reading that your turret now shoots farther is one thing, but actually seeing it mow down zombies because of it, that's a whole other level, right?
Yeah, it's like they just tell you the burger got bigger, but you don't get to actually taste the extra patty.
Right. Like, where's the beef?
Okay, bad pun, I know.
Mm.
But speaking of things that might leave you wanting more, the review was a little on the character stuff too, right?
Yeah, that's another place where Fatal Zone seems to be doing things a little differently instead of, building your character from scratch, like in some games.
Right, like making some kind of ultimate zombie-slaying Frankenstein monster.
Exactly. It sounds like Fatal Zone is more about picking from a set roster of soldiers. They've each got their own loadouts, and you can't really change them.
So less about making your own perfect zombie killer and more about what mastering the tools they give you. What's the advantage to doing it that way?
Well, the review mentioned that it makes each run feel more streamlined, I guess. You pick the soldier whose skills fit your plan for that run, and then it's all about using those well. Different kind of decision-making, for sure.
Okay, so less about theory crafting the ultimate build and more about in-the-moment tactics. But doesn't that kind of clash with the whole base building thing we were talking about? If your choices during a run actually matter long-term, shouldn't you have more say in how your characters end up?
It's a good point. I'm curious to see how that balance works out in the long run. But one thing the review highlighted that might make it all come together. Permadeath.
Oh, right. They said losing a soldier in this is way more intense than your usual roguelike.
Yeah.
Something about all those upgrades just vanishing.
Yeah, and that's where that whole XCOM comparison they made comes in. You know that feeling when you lose a high-level squad in XCOM because you got a string of terrible luck?
Ugh, don't even remind me. I still have nightmares about that one Newton Elite with the rocket launcher.
Exactly. Fatal Zone sounds like it's going for that same feeling of strategic heartbreak. Losing a soldier isn't just a minor setback. It's like, I don't know, losing a carefully crafted tool you relied on.
Especially with the base building, right? You've been pouring resources into making those soldiers better.
And then, bam, gone. Suddenly, the stakes are way higher.
Okay, yeah. I'm starting to see how all the pieces fit together. High stakes, meaningful progression, but it all kind of depends on whether the game can actually make you care about these little soldiers.
Exactly. That emotional connection, that's what makes a game truly great. I mean, we can geek out about mechanics and all that, but at the end of the day, it's got to make you feel something.
So does Fatal Zone nail that feeling, or does it just fall flat? What's the final word from the review?
Well, it seems like the reviewer is cautiously optimistic, you could say. They admit Fatal Zone is doing some really cool stuff, especially with this whole base building and permadeath combo.
There's always a but, isn't there?
Right. Well, they do point out a few places where Fatal Zone might be dropping the ball a bit, specifically the visuals.
Ah, right. We're talking about that whole thing where you upgrade your base, but you don't actually see the changes reflected in the game world.
Exactly. And it sounds like it's not just the base either. The reviewer said, yeah, the hordes look pretty awesome when they're swarming you. But the environments themselves are kind of just kind of there.
So you're not getting those moments of like, whoa, look at that, while you're exploring this zombie apocalypse.
Not so much, no. Kind of sounds like they missed an opportunity to do some real visual storytelling there, which is a shame.
Okay, so maybe not a visual masterpiece then.
Yeah.
But in terms of like actual gameplay innovation, does FatalZone deliver?
The reviewers seem to think so, yeah. They liked how addictive the gameplay loop is, how the base building makes you think strategically, and how permadeath makes your choices really matter.
So to bring this back to our listener who asked about it, should they throw down their hard-earned cash for FatalZone? What's the verdict?
Here's the thing. If you're the kind of player who loves spending hours theory crafting the perfect build, experimenting with all the crazy synergies some games have, Fatal Zone might feel a little limiting.
Right.
But if you're looking for a survivor's that's more than just grinding for better loot, something with more meat to it, strategically and emotionally,
And you don't mind sacrificing a little bit of visual flash for that extra depth.
then yeah, Fatal Zone might just scratch that itch. It all comes down to what you value in a game, ultimately.
That's a good point. And hey, even if FatalZone doesn't become your new obsession, it's still cool to see a game trying new things in a genre that can feel kind of stale sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. You gotta
Well,
keep things fresh.
Exactly. So, to our listener out there, if this sounds interesting at all, give FatalZone a shot. You might just find your new favorite zombie-slaying game. And if not, well, there's a whole horde of other games out there waiting to be conquered. Until next time, happy gaming.